Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Unstoppable Dad Project for another week. Thank you for joining us once again, or if you're here for the first time, welcome. Hope you enjoy what we're doing here. Hope you get some value out of it. Just before we get into it, a couple of favors that I need to ask of you. If you are listening and you find some value out of what we're doing, please share this around, help us grow this. And also, while you're at it, make sure that you have subscribed on the podcast platforms. If you're on Apple Podcasts, jump on there and leave us a review, as well as follow us on the socials. So we're only on Instagram and Facebook at this point. So at The Unstoppable Dad on Instagram and The Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. And while you're on Facebook, we do have a free group with a lot of free resources on there, some of which we go through in the podcast. So if you are looking for some help or some direction, jump on there and add yourself into that group as well. This week, I'm going to go through something that I've found has been a reoccurring theme in my life, both for myself and for the people I coach. And there are a whole bunch of different levels to this, but as you can tell by the title of the episode, do you want to help or do you want to be right? Do you want to be helped or do you want to be right is probably the best way to phrase that. And what I find a lot is, especially as men, there are times in our life where we know we need help. We know that we need probably somebody to either give us a push or give us some guidance into a particular direction. But we're so concerned with looking wrong or looking foolish or letting our ego get in the road that we just don't accept wholly what we want to do. And I can tell you now, let me talk about something that's been happening in my life over the last couple of months. So over the last couple of months, from a business perspective, it's been super tough. We've had where we are. Now we are, compared to some other places in the country, we have been very lucky. I'll be the first to admit that, and I know that. And the way I've felt about it has just simply been the way I've felt about it. And that's okay because everyone processes things differently. And for me, it has been quite different. It has been very, very difficult. We've had 2 very short lockdowns, but as a result of those 2 short lockdowns, from a business perspective, it has pretty much written off about 2.5 months of business growth for us, just due to the way our sales cycle works, due to the way we bring people in. It has just completely shot us in the foot, and we are almost at a point where we've had to write off 2.5 months. And over the last couple of weeks, we've started to gain some of that momentum back. But from a mental point of view, I have not been in a good headspace, and it's been hard. And a lot of that mental headspace has been solely around what is happening within the business, because there has been that financial stress and that financial pressure that has been impacting my mental state. And when I've sat down and looked at it over the last couple of weeks, and now I pay a mentor for my business. I'm part of a program that helps me grow. And there's been some advice that has been given to me at different times that I haven't 100% took on board. And over the last few weeks, and where things really started to turn, it's that I either A, didn't feel comfortable doing what was being said to me for whatever reason, then there's a whole heap of different instances. Or B, I was too concerned with my own ego and the fact that I'd been doing something a particular way, and what I was being told to do, I perceived as if I was doing that, it meant that the way I'd been doing things would have made me wrong. So for me, it really come down to the fact where I had to kind of say to myself, do you want to be helped or do you want to be right? Because for me, it was basically a matter of, you've got this help which is being given to you, this advice which is being given to you on how you can take some action to get out of the place that you want to, that you are now, and go to where you want to go. Or you can sit there, continue on the same path that you're doing, and you can be right because that's what you want. That's what your ego is telling me I should do. Whereas if I go and I take this other action, in my mind, I was telling myself that I was going to be wrong. And it was the wrong way of thinking about it. I was letting my ego take control, and it was at a detriment to not only my mental health, but also my business health, which was, as I'm sure a lot of men, a lot of dads, a lot of fathers listening to this know, sometimes that financial stress just filters into every single other aspect. I know I was getting shorter with those closer to me, and it was just turning into this big thing that it didn't need to be, all because I had this help that I was getting, but I was just standing in my own way, and I didn't want to be helped at that point. I wanted to be right. Now, there's times where sometimes we do need to discard the information and the help that we're getting because maybe it doesn't fit with where we're trying to go. But there's other times where, and not only did I have I seen it in myself during this period, but in previous periods in my life, but I see it all the time when I'm coaching people. And if I take it back to simply just something like trying to, so say for example, we coach quite a lot of people to do Olympic weightlifting. So snatch and clean and jerk that you would see in the Olympics, that form of weightlifting, not lifting weights, weightlifting. And there is a highly technical element to it. And in order to learn it properly, you have to start off light, empty barbell, even a wooden dowel, and you have to spend time building that technique. And a lot of people that I coach, especially if they've done a lot of weight training in the past and they've got themselves to a particular level of proficiency in that weightlifting, they don't actually want to be coached. They just want to put the number on the bar. And it can be a real shot to the ego when they have to dial it right back and they're being told by a coach, by myself or another coach that, hey, we're not quite where we need to be from a technical point of view. I need you to bring it back. And then there starts this resistance. And it's this same resistance that I experienced where it's like, I kind of know what the person is telling me is right, but I can't get past what I'm telling myself and this shot to the ego that it's going to give me by taking it back. And I guess the one thing that I want to say around that is, if you can step back for a second and understand that feeling and that perception that you are going to have around taking that action is only yours, and there is no one around you that has that same perception, it makes it easier to take that step and jettison that ego, because I can speak for me personally in the fact that when I didn't want to take the action around the thing that I wanted to do, and I was telling myself that no, it was the wrong thing to do. I wasn't meant to, I'm not meant to be doing this. And, no, I was right. I was right. Really, there wasn't anybody in any factor of my life that would have thought any less of me because I was not, and it wasn't that I was doing things incorrectly. It was that I perceived that by taking this action and changing the course of where I was going, that people would think that I was wrong. They would think less of me. Add in whatever else you think that, that compounding effect that kind of pushes us down, and the chest puffs up and the ego gets in our road of taking a different action to what we're taking. And it's really that we perceive that people are going to think less of us if we have to change course and if we have to change direction or if we have to take a step back. And sometimes when you're getting coaching, when you're getting direction from somebody and it seems uncomfortable that you have to go and take this action that may seem at complete opposite ends to what you are doing, there is probably a better than average chance that that is the way you need to go. That is the path that you need to go down. And for me, understanding and acknowledging that it was internal, no one else within my life was actually going to think any less of me by making this change or taking this action. And when I got to the point and understood and realized that, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders and it became easier to take that to take that path and to go down that road and make that change. And as a result, for me in that this last couple of month period, I've noticed that change in my mindset from being in a spot which felt very dark and very heavy to now being somewhere where we're in a better spot and I can see a little bit more of a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, that doesn't mean that the work has been any easier, but it means that instead of wrestling and going down a path and just because I want to be right, and then changing direction based off somebody else's advice, who I trust, who I invest in to try and help me, and doing a 180 and going down this path and taking that action has given me a bit more clarity on where I want to go and what I want to do. And now things have started to get a little bit better and they've started to raise, and where I'm at feels a lot more comfortable. So the big thing about getting on the podcast and talking about this, there are so many instances in our life where, and someone can give us advice and we can talk about how we don't know whether it's the right advice for us and should we do it and should we not do it. But if you are at a point where things aren't working, things aren't moving in the direction that you want them to, and you're consistently taking the same action that you were before time and time and time again, and all that it's causing you by taking that action is sending you down a darker and darker path, and somebody gives you advice that you've potentially invested in, that you trust, that knows you well enough that the advice that they're giving you is in your best interest, maybe it's time to put the ego aside. Understand that by changing path and doing something different, no one else in our life is going to think any less of us. In fact, it's probably going to make everyone else in our life a little bit happier with where we're at, because we're going to be happier about it when things start moving in the right direction. And understanding that it's our own ego that's getting in our road. And sometimes it's not just about being right. Sometimes it is about taking on advice, taking on coaching from somebody we trust, somebody who is invested in our best interest. And that's the way we can turn things around. But the first step for me over those first couple of months was really understanding that all the negative self-talk that was going into this change of action that I needed to take was all internalized. No one else was feeding that to me. And it was that step back and that thought of, do I want to be right, or do I want to be coached, and do I want to be helped? And that's it. That's the podcast for the week. It is such a hard concept to try and get out in front of, because you can be so far in the thick of it, and all you want to do is work to try and come out the other side of it. And sometimes more work isn't what we need to do. Sometimes smarter work is what we need to do. And in order to get that action that we need to do to shift things, we need somebody else with an outside perspective to give us some advice and give us some coaching. And then for us who are in it, who need to take that different action, putting that ego aside, going, this is just my ego talking. No one else is going to think any less of me by changing it. And you know what? If it's going to take you to a better spot, and they do, they are probably not the type of person you want to have in your life anyway. But no one else is going to think any less of me. In fact, it's probably going to start to improve some of my other relationships. Taking that advice, taking that different action, and then seeing how quickly things can turn the other way when we're not constantly in this hole, and we're not constantly beating our head against a brick wall because we're taking the same action that is not yielding a result that we are happy with. So, it's my thoughts on that. Do you want help, or do you want to be right? Do you want to be coached, or do you want to be right? It's a question to always ask yourself if somebody's giving you advice, because maybe it's the ego standing in the way, or it could also be that you're getting bad advice too. So Hope everyone's having a great week. Thank you again for tuning in. Jump on, give us a like, give us a follow on the socials, on all the podcast platforms. I will see you all next week. Goodbye.